Yo, what is up, y'all? It's coming back here again tonight with another episode of After the Buzzer, the show where I recap the NBA games from the night. We have 3 games tonight with one series ending. The first one of the 2022 NBA playoffs with the Boston Celtics sweeping the Brooklyn Nets. This is the one that I personally thought was going to go 7 games, and so the fact that the Celtics swept the Nets is pretty damn impressive. But before we get into that, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. Trying to hit 10k subs before the end of the playoffs, and your support has been phenomenal, so thank you so much for that. But yeah, like I said, the Celtics sweeping the Nets is crazy to me. They won this one 116 to 112, and it was a pretty dominant effort throughout. It was the typical way that the Celtics have been doing things. The Nets did make a late run to try and bring this one back, but ultimately it was just too little too late. Kevin Durant finally showed up in this series. He had 39 points, 7 rebounds, and 9 assists in 47 minutes of action. He was incredible in this game. He looked like Kevin Durant finally. It was just too little too late when you have went down 3-0. It's impossible up to this point in the NBA to come back. Of course, the Raptors are trying to do so, now down 3-2 after being down 3-0, so who knows, maybe they make some miraculous run, but it's never happened before. And so once you get into that hole, there's not really much you can do. Ben Simmons was supposed to play in this game, but he ended up backing out, spurring once again talks between management and Ben Simmons, a very eerily similar situation to what happened in Philly about his mental health. When will he be ready to play? And it wasn't this season. So the Brooklyn Nets, after making that midseason trade, coming into the year's NBA championship favorites, end up being the first team eliminated from the playoffs, which is pretty crazy. I'm going to drop a video tomorrow talking about what's next for them. That's what I did last year. Every time a team was eliminated, I made a video talking about what was next for them, and so you'll see that tomorrow. So if you want to hear me talk more about the Nets, kind of in full, and what I see their future looking like, what are some of the big things they need to look at in the offseason, don't miss out on that tomorrow. Make sure to subscribe. But really, I kind of want to focus on Boston a little bit here, because what they did should not go unnoticed. This was a team that coming into the playoffs, I said many times, could win the Eastern Conference, that they've got the star power to do it with Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, great team play, great coaching, the hottest team in the league. And there are a lot of people who said that I was crazy, or when I picked the Boston Celtics to win this series, given it wasn't 7 games, and hell, I even gave the Nets a lot of credit in that video. There are a lot of people who said, oh, you're crazy, Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving aren't losing in round 1. They didn't just lose, they got swept. And while I do think they didn't play well, the reason they didn't play so well, it has to go to the credit of the Boston Celtics. I've seen a lot of people say on Twitter, mainly Nets fans, weirdly, which confuses me because a lot of Nets fans are saying, oh, the Celtics didn't win this series, the Nets lost it. But I don't understand as a fan of a team why you would put your team down before building up the team that beat you and talking about how great they are. That's not really how I work as a fan. But overall, the Celtics were just by far the better team. It really wasn't close in this series. The Celtics had the Nets number. Ime Udoka outcoached Steve Nash. Jason Tatum outplayed everyone else on the court. He's been a top 5 player, probably the best player so far in these NBA playoffs. He's continuing to establish himself as, like I said last video, one of the best two-way talents in the league, a top 10 player in this league. I think he's firmly in that conversation now. Tonight, he had 29 points. He ended up fouling out right at the end, but it didn't matter. Jaylen Brown had 22 and 8, 20 and 11 from Marcus Smart, including some really important plays down the stretch. 14 from Grant Williams, 13 from Al Horford, including a tip-in dagger that really sealed this one at the end. Just all around great team play. This Boston Celtics team is really, really scary. Not just because they swept the Nets, which sweeping Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving is no easy feat, and making them look human is even more difficult, but really the fact that now they've got rest. Now they're going to go up against the Milwaukee Bucks, who are without Chris Middleton, probably for a little bit of that series. So the Celtics are probably early favorites going into that series, and they've shown the ability to shut down some incredible scorers in this series. I'm really curious to see how they try and shut down, of course, assuming the Bucks win. I think most of us think they are. How they're going to shut down Giannis, Chris Middleton when he comes back. How will Drew Holiday factor into things? How do they match up with their size? Of course, they've got the bigs in Al Horford, Daniel Tyson, Robert Williams, who have all played really solid defensively in the playoffs and over the course of this season to match up with the Bucks size. I'm really curious. I think Boston is a really fun matchup for this Bucks team. We'll see if they're able to take advantage of this extra rest, being the first team to make it out of that first round and move on to the second round. I hope people that said that the Celtics didn't have a chance of winning the finals, or that they were frauds, or that they were going to a lot of people thought they were going to comfortably lose in the first round, which I personally thought was really crazy. I hope now they're kind of realizing how wrong they were. The Celtics team's no joke. They were incredible in the second half of the season. They're 32-7 since January 22nd. They've won 32 games and lost 7 since late January. They've been by far the most dominant team in the league over that stretch. They're a ridiculously talented squad, led by Jason Tatum, who I believe is a future MVP. Jaylen Brown, a great 2 option, great team players. There's not much more I could say about the Celtics team, other than the fact that they're looking really scary. They're going to be a team that not can just beat the Bucks, but win it all. They're probably one of the early favorites right now to win it all. And I'm not just saying that because they're the only team that's made it to the second round, but because of how good they look. This is a playoff built and tested and now ready team. They've shown it in the first round series. It doesn't matter who they're up against, doesn't matter how many people doubt them, and which sounds weird to say because it was a 2-7 matchup, but the amount of people that were doubting the Celtics in this series kind of blew my mind, and so it's cool to see the Celtics go out and kind of take control of this one. I'm excited to see how their run continues to go into the Eastern Conference. Going to be facing the reigning champs, probably 90% sure on that, 99% sure on that one in the second round. Excited for that matchup, but shout out to the Celtics. They're really good. Moving on from that one, we had Mavs v Jazz. The Jazz, surprisingly to me, tied this series up last game in Luka Doncic's return, but this one was not even close. The Mavericks beat them 102-77. It took until the last 5 minutes of the game for the Jazz to score 70 points. This one was a blowout most of the way through. Mavs were up 16, up 26 at the end of 3 quarters. It just wasn't close. The Mavericks completely annihilated this Jazz team, both offensively and defensively. Donovan Mitchell only had 9 points before leaving with a hamstring injury towards the end of the game. Hopefully that's not keeping him out, because the Jazz, they showed some fight last game. Maybe they could go out and force this one to a game 7. But if Donovan Mitchell isn't on the court, it's not going to be close. Gobert at 17 and 11 and only 27 minutes of action, but there was not much he could really do. Bogdanovich had 2 points, 4 from Mike Conley, 5 from Royce O'Neal, only 1 20-point score in Jordan Clarkson, 8 for Daniel House, 5 for Hernan Gomez. It was abysmal, this Jazz offense. And a lot of the credit does go to the Mavericks defense. They really were clamping up in this one. But just even open looks, I think there was one time where Donovan Mitchell airballed a layup or something like that. It was really rough, and I have spoken to the fact that I think this Mavs team is a terrible matchup. I think that the Jazz really didn't stand much of a chance. Heading into Game 6, I would be shocked if the Jazz were able to bounce back from this one. This really feels like a death blow. Luka looked incredible, 33, 13, and 5. 24 from Jalen Brunson, who continues to earn his bag in the offseason. 13 from Dorian Finney-Smith, 9 from Reggie Bullock, 9 from Spencer Dinwiddie. They only put up 102 points, but it felt like it was just every shot that they hit, it felt like it was like a gut punch to this Jazz team. This Jazz team is really on the ropes as a core. I think everyone anticipates really big moves in the offseason. It really does feel like this thing is falling apart right before our eyes in this playoff series. Someone said on Twitter, even if the Jazz somehow manage to pull this thing off, they think that things are going to fall apart in the offseason because it really feels like tensions and things are strained at this point just from watching the team. It's very clear that they are not a championship caliber team at this point. Last year was their best chance with this core to win it all, and they just didn't pull it off. But in terms of the Mavericks, this is a scary team. This is a team that I genuinely think has a chance to come out of the Western Conference if they really lock in. Now, of course, the Phoenix Suns were my pick, and that's who they would have to face in the second round, assuming Phoenix does get out against the Pelicans, which I do think they will. That would be a really tough matchup for the Dallas Mavericks, but also for the Phoenix Suns, depending on how Devin Booker looks with that hamstring injury. How healthy is he going to be? Because the big worry was always, how healthy will Luka Doncic be? And with this game, he looked completely healthy. He looked fine. He was shimmying, hitting step-back threes, finishing over Gobert for and ones. It looked like the typical Luka Doncic that we're accustomed to seeing, and he's just been a guy that continues to up his play in the playoffs. And if he's playing like this, Jalen Brunson's playing like this, the role players are playing well, they're a really hard team for any team to beat. Now, of course, they don't really have that second star next to Luka Doncic, but Jalen Brunson's been playing up to that role, and if he can continue to put up similar numbers, this Mavs team has a chance to make a really deep run in the West. They've got shooters, they've got defenders, and they've got one of the best players in the league in Luka Doncic, who is continuing to establish himself as a future all-time great. And like I said, he really does just seem to elevate and thrive in the playoffs. I would be super excited to see how a Suns-Mavericks series would play out, and if the Pelicans manage to pull off the upset against the Suns without Devin Booker, the Mavs are going to make the Western Conference Finals, and once they get there, who knows what's possible. So this Mavs team is also looking really scary. Their ability to lock up perimeter shooters, drive and penetrate with either Luka Doncic or Jalen Brunson or hell even Spencer Dinwiddie. And if their shooters are on, there aren't many ways to beat them. So shout out to Jason Kidd, by the way. He's done a really good job of coaching this roster this year, keeping them competitive and really in the second half of the season turning things around. They've been phenomenal. And if Luka Doncic stays healthy like this, they're going to be a really tough out for any team, not just in the Western Conference, but in the NBA. If somehow they made it to the finals, Luka continues to establish himself as one, like I said, one of the best young players and players period in the league. Very similar to Jason Tatum out in the Eastern Conference, although I think Luka is a lot more well known by most fans as being one of those top players going forward for this next generation, but two young guys that are really making a stake as some of the best in the league. And finally, we had the Raptors-Sixers game. The Sixers, after going up 3-0, have now lost 2 in a row. This is a 15-point loss at home to the Toronto Raptors, 103-88. Joel Embiid had 20 and 11 in this game. He was fine, nothing too crazy. Really, he struggled defensively, which is weird from Embiid. Of course, he has that thumb injury, and so I think that is kind of impacting some of his decision-making when he contests, how he contests, because it just looked off. It didn't look like he had the motor for it or something like that, so maybe he's tired. But overall, this was one of the worst defensive games I've seen from Embiid in a while. Maxey only had 12 points, 15 from James Harden, who was really bad in this game. A bunch of just careless and weird turnovers and plays that you typically don't see from James Harden. It's clear he's lost a step offensively. He's getting blocked a lot, just losing the ball a lot of times. And it really brings up the question of how much are the Sixers willing to give him in the offseason in terms of an extension. A lot of people are talking about, oh, could this be the first 0-3 comeback? I don't think it will be. I still think the Sixers get this thing done in 6 or 7. I think next game they get it done. But shout out to the Raptors. They really are fighting. And they're a team that has the gut. They believe they can win this series. When you watch them play, they are not at all like, we can't win this. It's never been done before. No, they believe they can do this. Siakam had 23, 10, and 7, 16 from OG Anunoby, 12 from Scotty Barnes, 16 from Gary Trent Jr., 17 from Precious. They had everyone kind of a pretty even scoring load in this one, getting really big defensive stops, scoring the ball. There just really wasn't anyone on the Sixers that was able to match up with the length of the Raptors, and that was one of the biggest problems I mentioned in my video, talking about this series, about how they're just such a lengthy and hard to stop team with their size. The Sixers are going to have to make some adjustments. Doc Rivers is going to have to change something up because it just wasn't working in this game. But I really don't think it's necessarily his fault. James Harden just isn't playing the way that James Harden needs to play. Embiid, after the game, when asked about it, was saying that Harden should be more aggressive, take more shots. He only took 11 shots tonight. And I do think that that would help the team, but he's not really knocking him down. This is a really tough matchup for him with the length of this team. Even though they don't have a rim protector, they don't really need that because James Harden isn't quite the athlete that he used to be. So he's not driving past guys. He's getting on their hip, but they've got the length to either knock the ball away, deflect it, block the shot, just obstruct the shot enough for him to miss. And it's really getting to his head. He looks like visibly frustrated with his inability to score the ball. If the Sixers are going to want to make a deep run, Harden's got to figure this thing out. And if they want to make it out of the first round, they've got to figure this thing out. Like I said, I don't think this goes to a Game 7. I think the Sixers will finish it out. I just don't see them losing 3 in a row. But overall, the Raptors are really making that fight, and they're trying to push. They've got it back to Toronto. That's all they had to do for this point. Now, go out, win that game in Toronto, head back to Philly, and try and secure the thing and become the first team to ever come back from down 0-3. A lot of memes are already flying, and I can tell you, if something crazy happens, once again, I don't think it will, but if something crazy happens, Doc Rivers will never hear the end of it, or James Harden, for that matter of fact. Hope Embiid is able to get more healthy. Like I said, they really needed this sweep to get Embiid healthy. It's not working out that way. And so I think that is going to take a big toll on their chances in the playoffs if they're not able to get out of this round pretty comfortably, but we'll see. So those are my thoughts on those games. Let me know in the comment section below what your biggest takeaways were. Please leave a like and subscribe. Like I said, trying to hit 10K before the end of the playoffs, and you subscribing goes a long way. But for right now, I appreciate y'all watching. I will see you all later. Real One, say it back.